Okay, well, let's make a start. So first of all, welcome to everyone to our webinar today on optimizing financial forms. Just a quick hello first to show you who you've got on this call from Zuko. Firstly, myself, I'm Alan, I'm the Managing Director, and also my colleague Lena, who will introduce herself now very briefly.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lena. So I'm one of the account managers at Zuko. So basically my role at Zuko is to just make sure everybody gets the most out of the tool and help users analyze data. Basically anything that could help you optimize your forms. I'll be there for.
Great. So before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. We'll be answering questions at the end. So if you would like to ask any questions, please drop them in the Q&A and we'll take a look at them at the end. Also, the slides and the recordings will be made available to you, will be shared with you afterwards. So you don't need to take copious notes, so you should be fine. So I'll start with the presentation. I'm going to turn off my video now so it's not a distraction. I think Lena will do the same, so you should just hear my voice and see the slides. So first up, just a very quick introduction to Zuko. For those of you that don't know, Zuko is a software platform and consultancy service to help optimize form conversion. Basically, we let businesses know when, where, and why users are abandoning their forms with the goal of improving their conversion rate, reducing abandonment. So as you might imagine, we spend a lot of time looking at forms, testing forms, optimizing forms, analyzing the data around forms. So we produce a lot of content to help businesses improve the form experience and form conversion. The most recent one of these is our white paper we released on optimizing forms in the financial sector. So banking, insurance, credit cards, loans, foreign exchange, etc., etc. So that is out and it's available for download. There's a link there you can download it from if you want to have a look at that. This webinar is based on the white paper, but obviously it's a much, we've only got half an hour, so it's a cut down version, only looking at some of the key points. If you want a more detailed overview, then the white paper is where you should look. So we'd encourage you to download that as well. But in terms of today, it gives you a bit of a taste of the content that's in the financial forms webinar. So hopefully today will be useful and you can delve deeper by looking at the white paper if you would like. So what are we going to cover today? So as I mentioned, we're looking at some of the key things that came out of the white paper. I should note that we also have a sister ebook which looks at form optimization more generally, which you can also download from the Zuko website. But we're looking at 8 key points that we want to cover today, which hopefully, when it comes to financial services, they're generally quite specific to financial services. So hopefully you'll find them useful. So there's 8. The first one I want to talk about is the language you use on your forms. So it seems simple, but you should be speaking your customer's language, not the language that you speak day to day. Often we live in our own little worlds where we have our own jargon that everyone in the industry understands, but we don't recognize that others outside the industry don't know what we're talking about. So just because we're happy using terms such as premiums, APR, KYC, etc., does not mean that your potential customers actually know what they mean. And it's our duty really to make it as easy as possible for our potential customers, and obviously that's business critical for us. There's a lot of studies out there that show that plain language improves user experience and user comprehension, and therefore feeds into an improved conversion rate because people know what they're getting into. So there's no real excuse not to be thinking of it from the customer's point of view. So as a general principle, obviously, review your form, look at the language. Does the customer know what this means? Test it on real customers. and see if they actually know what you're talking about. Some examples are here. You know, there's probably hundreds of them, but I've put some here that of common terms that we see on financial forms that actually customers sometimes struggle with. I won't go through them all, but just to pick out a few. Premium in the insurance industry is a key culprit. Often we talk about premiums. Customers don't know what that means. So should we just be talking about the monthly or annual payment that they must make? Similarly, APR, you know, what does that mean? Actually, do we need to explain it a little bit more? Talk about interest rates rather than just an acronym of APR. And then, you know, those are ones that the jargon, sometimes it may be a case of the customer kind of gets it, but actually needs to understand a little bit more of what you're talking about. So for instance, assets or even income, do you need to explain a little bit more about what you need? So with assets, you talk about exactly what an asset is and what that means when they're putting a calculation in, because we often see with Zuko, we see this question come up: what are your net assets? And you see a lot of abandonment on those questions, because people go, I don't know, I can't calculate it. Even if they do know, have they worked out how much their house is worth and what the outstanding mortgage is on it? So it gets very complicated. So always think about the language you're using from a customer's point of view, or it could end in tears. The second broad point I'd like to talk about is non-intenders. And what I mean by non-intenders is people who come to your site who basically have no intention of buying today. There's some research by Forrester shows that 49% of visitors to financial websites and forums have no intention of buying today. However, that does not mean that they will never become a customer of yours in the future. So when you're doing your forms, you need to consider them and not put them off. There's kind of three key groups of this audience that you need to be mindful of and cater for, depending on what your financial form is selling. The first group is essentially the one on the far left, looking for information or a comparison. These are people who are in research mode. They're saying, well, maybe I want a credit card, but I just want to check, you know, what the interest rates are, or mortgage similarly. So they're looking, but they know that they've got to speak to their partner, or they're never going to make a decision today, but they need to get the relevant information so they can make the decision. So it's important for them that the key facts that you have are easily findable, usually interest rates or costs or whatever it may be. So you're not burying them at the end of a long form. So they've got to progress through to get the basic information. That should be up front. It should be on your website and probably on your form as well, to make sure they can find it easily. The second group is those in the middle. So these are people who are clearly not ready today. But what you need to do with them is that they could well be that they may well want to buy from you. They just don't want to do it today. So what you need to do is make it clear for them what information they will need when it comes to buying time. So if you're going to need information like social security number, passport, put that up front so it's easy for them to see now. They're going to need to come back with that information. Also, if you're going to ask questions about income, make sure they know so they can get that ready if their financial situation is slightly more complex than a simple gross income salary. So you need to make it clear what they need for when they do come back. And the final group to address the needs of is those who want to check their eligibility. Sorry. So for instance, you may be a credit card company. They may want to check whether you'll give them a credit card or whether you'll give them a loan based on their circumstances. Obviously, they're not looking for a final decision, but they want to know if they should spend any time with you or not. And so what works pretty well here is a quick check function, just getting the barest of information from them, whether that's income or whatever it may be, to say, okay, yes, you may be eligible, or no, you're not eligible, so don't waste your time. And here it's important, just ask for the least information that you need. Don't ask for details, don't ask for anything personal until they are ready to commit. So you're basically giving them an easy route to check their eligibility without having to give up any personal information. So that's point number two. The third point, which I kind of touched on just now, is managing expectations early. We often see on forms, people come to them blind. They don't know what to expect. They don't know how long it will take. They don't know what they will need. And yeah, it's extremely common, particularly if you've got a multi-step form, that you get through to maybe step 3, step 4, and you suddenly say, oh, what's your passport number? Or, you know, your driver's license, or whatever it may be in your particular market. And people go, oh no. And they go upstairs and they try and rummage through the drawers to find the passport. And maybe they'll come back, but then maybe they've been timed out, or maybe they won't find it and they'll say, forget it, and I'll do it tomorrow. And then by the time they come back, they may come back to you, or you may lose them forever. So it's important to manage their expectations early. Tell them up front what they need, and also how long it's going to take. If you've got a long involved process and they think it's going to take 5 minutes, they're going to drop out if it takes long, if they don't know how long it's going to take. So you can do this in a number of ways. Obviously, as I said, tell them what documentation they're going to need. Tell them about the process. If you've got a KYC or identity check in there, make sure they know that. And also, if you can't return a result immediately, tell them, okay, it could take up to, say, 24 hours to get your approval and your result. A very good way of doing a lot of this is through the use of progress bars. So people see the rough categories they're going to have to supply, you know, whether that's income, whether that's passport details. So they can see up front, you know, there's a number of stages. I'm going to have to commit a decent amount of time now. So am I ready to do that now? If I'm not, I'll wait. If I am, I can progress. And they don't spend 5-10 minutes of the time giving you information and then getting frustrated because they have to drop out having spent that time. So kind of linked to that, but not exactly, is one of the consistent things we see in the finance sector is the successful use of multi-step forms. So that is forms whereby you have different sections that users progress through. And there's a lot more about this on our website, but also in the white paper about the evidence for multi-step. And consistently what we see is that multi-step forms perform better than having all the questions in a single step, except where you've got a very simple form where you're just asking for very basic details. If you chunk it out and put it into different steps, the likelihood is your conversion rate will improve, because people find it easier to answer a few questions at a time and are not put off with a form that's got, you know, 50 questions in one, and they just see it and run away. There are some things you can do to help with this, though, and to improve your conversion rate with multi-step forms, which we've outlined here. So the first point is to cluster questions that are similar. So that's fairly obvious. So for instance, you might have your personal details, and then later on you'll go to financial details, and you'll go for delivery details or whatever it may be that you can do. And there typically are some natural chunks that you can do that with. The next point is about easy before difficult. Typically what you will find on forms is if you ask easy questions first, it brings the user in and makes it much more likely that they will answer the more difficult questions later on, because they've already invested their time in the process. So this is where you ask something simple like name is easy. There's a couple of caveats for that. It differs for certain insurance functions, which we'll come on to, but also you need to manage your expectations. If there are difficult questions coming up, make sure they know what those questions may be. We've talked about a progress bar. It's very good for multi-step forms to show people how long they've got and how far they've progressed along the journey. But aligned to that, you need to make sure that users can move between steps. So for instance, if they get through to step 4 and realize, oh, I need to go back to step 1 because I need to change my answer, they don't want to be having to click the back button and what have you. They want to be able to click the big number 2 and go straight back to step number 2. But if you do this, and also with the back button, one of the big things with a multi-step form is make sure the data saves. If they click the back button because that's what they're used to, and they lose all the answers they've put in, that's the fastest way to get them to abandon. We see sometimes 10% abandonment just because data is not saving if people move between steps. So that's absolutely crucial. We often get asked, how many steps should my form have? Obviously, it depends on what you're asking, and you'll find something natural for yourself. But typically, ideally, it should be between 3 to 6 steps. If you have more than that, often it can get a bit out of hand and people sort of end up abandoning. And then the final point to make multi-step forms work is to use conditional logic and also pre-fill answers. So by which I mean, if someone answers a question, which means they don't need to answer other later questions, make sure the logic excludes those questions that become irrelevant. So you're not asking them something that they don't need. And similarly, if they give you an answer and you ask something related later on and you can pre-fill their answer for them, make sure you do that. No one wants to be putting in their email address multiple times. So just make sure you're pre-filling where you can. So that's multi-step forms. The next thing I will move on to is a question that often causes issues for users, and that is employment. So job picking. You often see this in insurance and other financial services where you're asking, you need to know what job someone does so you can price the risk. But the issue is that we are building these forms to suit ours and our computer and our back end because we've defined a certain amount of jobs and we've priced risk against them. Doesn't help the user at all, and in fact it hinders them. So if you look on the left-hand image there, so our CRO consultant has tried to put their job title in. Okay, well, this is my job title, this is what I do. Okay, well, now they've got a big red error messages. Well, what does that mean? How am I supposed to fit this to a job that, I don't know. They've also said, what industry in? Oh, well, I'm in technology, because that makes sense to me, that's mine. Well, actually, technology, the computer doesn't recognize it. So you're causing problems for people, and you'll certainly find in this case, and particularly with insurance, people are paranoid about putting the wrong answer. They're really scared that if they put something in that is not technically correct, if they have a claim later down the line, the insurance company will reject them because they put the wrong job title in. Whether that's true or not, that's the perception. So you will see a lot of abandonment around here if you don't make the effort to make it as simple as possible. So how do you do that? Well, there's a number of ways in descending order of preference. Firstly, first question to ask is, do you need this information now? Is it really crucial for you? And if it is, can you get it at a later time? Once you've captured their details, once they're a lead, can you ask them either via call center, via another form, via an email? Is it better to do it later? You always need to be thinking about that, because there will be a lot of friction and it will put people off and will cause them to drop out. If you do need it now, okay, well, what's the interface that works best for the customer? And the one that we find works best, if you can do it, is essentially free text. Let the customer put in what they believe their job title is, and then use logic at the back end to categorize them yourself. So your back end is doing all the work for them, and so they're not having a bad user experience. If you can't do that, then there are other ways as well. So on the right-hand side, there's an example from UK's Compare the Market, where it's got a kind of a smart search. So people are putting in job titles and words, and then you give them a set list of job titles that they can select from. But it's as I say, it's a smart search. It's not just a basic, if you put digital in, you get digital manager or digital consultant. It picks out jobs that are related to the words that are being used, so they can be relatively confident of picking a job that suits them and also suits you. And then probably the final thing, which we really hate doing, but it might be, it's better than nothing, is if you just had an exhaustive list in a big ugly drop down. So they click on it and you have a list of 20 to 30 job areas. Now these aren't ideal, because often the job areas won't match what the user perceives their job to be, but it's better than than nothing and causing them to drop out. So that would be the lowest choice to do. But always make sure you're trying to make this as easy as possible for the user. The next thing to come on to, which is often asked on financial forms, is the phone number area. So we see across financial forms and all sorts of forms, to be honest, the phone number consistently is off-putting for people. And people drop out on the phone number field more often than you would expect, because typically people know their own phone number, so it's not difficult for them to do. Why does this happen? There's probably two reasons. One is a fear of hassle. They think, well, you know, why do you need my phone number? You're just going to hassle me. You're just going to try and sell me. You've got my email address. You might have my physical address. You don't need my phone number. The second reason they drop out is a poor user interface. So they don't know what to put in. So, you know, do they put in an international dialing code with a plus on, so +44? Do they need to put brackets for the region? What happens if they put spaces or dashes? How does this work? Is it going to break? What happens if it's longer than expected? So the Baymard Institute did some research, and they found that 89% of users were entering their phone number in a different format to the one that the form requested. So people are just used to putting in their phone number the way they want. And if the form says that's not right, it breaks and it gives them a bad user experience, and it may cause them to leave. So how do we mitigate these issues with phone numbers? Well, two things. Firstly, again, as ever, do you need it? Do you really need their phone number? If you do need it, then tell them why. You know, you might need it to verify them. So, okay, we need your phone number to verify you, to call you up, and tell them exactly why you need it. When it comes to the UI, you want to ideally just have free text there. You know, let them put in the number as they see it. You know, we've seen consistently this is the best solution, because if you're going to call someone, usually it is a human that's going to do it, and they can interpret the number they've been given. And, you know, we've never really seen any issues with that. So free text, let them put in the phone number as they see fit, and it shouldn't cause you any issues. Okay, so moving on. Point number 7 is actually one of the things that financial services have that other sectors don't have is often a big offline infrastructure. So depending on which market you're in and customer expectations, you can use this to your advantage. You have physical assets such as branches and call centers that you can potentially use. So one of the things you can do is to make sure there's a prominent phone number displayed on your form. You know, even in the more digitally sophisticated markets, what you find is people want to know they have access to a live person quickly if they need it. I think the studies I've seen in the US, 84% of people want access to a live person. So provide that phone number, gives them the reassurance to get started and go on, because they know if they get into trouble, then they can call someone up. You might want to consider driving to local branches. Again, depends on your market. Some markets are, say, more digitally sophisticated. Some, you know, it may be important for you to give people the option to go to their local branch and potentially have a map to show them where that is to complete, particularly a difficult application such as a mortgage or a credit card. This point is especially important for new accounts. I think McKinsey research showed that 60% of new financial products, even in markets such as the US, are still purchased in branch. So people still do want that reassurance, even in more sophisticated markets. So you need to think, you know, do we want to drive people to the local branch? And if you do, can you, you know, create a hybrid experience? So digitizing your branch so they can fill out your forms online at a terminal, but there are people on hand to help them if there is any issues. And I'm conscious of time, so I'll move on to the final point that we have, and that's around insurance forms. Now, these are funny ones. They tend to have their own quirks, and there's a couple of things ones I'll share here. Now, I talked earlier about easy before difficult. You're going to get a better completion rate if you ask for easy things before difficult. This isn't always the case with insurance. Often what we see is those eligibility checkers coming in saying, okay, I just want to know, you know, what's the price going to be? Give me a quote. And what they they prefer is to give the difficult details, so their car details, house details, whatever it may be, so they can get a quote. And they don't want to give you their name, give you the lead, because they're scared, their details, they're just going to get bombarded with emails or phone calls. They just want to know what the price is, and then if they like the price, they'll progress. So often what you need to do is not ask for anything personal until after you've given them the quote, and you can try and sell them then. And often you'll see that's a much better approach for insurance forms. And the other slightly strange one you find is sometimes, and interestingly, we've seen where you're returning a quote, if the user perceives it to be too fast, they don't trust it. So they've just spent 5 to 10 minutes giving you personal financial details to get a quote. And if it just within a millisecond comes back, they believe that actually, whoa, you've just given the same quote to everyone. You're not considering it. It's a strange one. It's a little bit illogical, but actually we have seen this phenomenon that actually the conversion rate improves if you just leave it a few milliseconds, an extra beat, so it looks like the computer's generating and finding the best quote for them, rather than just returning a general quote that anyone could have got. So strange one, but we have seen it. So if you're in the insurance industry, have a think about that. Fast isn't always best, strangely enough. So those are some of the key points from the white paper. To reiterate them here, as I say, we'll share the slides. We'll move on to Q&A, but just before, the obligatory sales slide. If you do think that your forms could use some improvement, we do offer free trials of Zuko, the software platform, and also happy to give you a no strings opinion on your forms where we think the friction points might be based on our years of optimizing forms. So that is the main points for today. So let's move on to any Q&As. Elena, are there any questions that have come up?
Perfect. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or in the Q&A box. The question we have so far is, how would you recommend asking users for their income?
Yeah, so income is a tricky one. There's probably a couple, they say we've got a whole section on this in the white paper, but there's a couple of things you can do. First thing you need to do is be clear on what income is, because it means different things to different people, particularly if they're self-employed. So absolutely can make it clear. Is it gross income? Is it net income? And what does that mean? But really, people can get stressed if they think you need the income to the nearest penny, or it's going to, they're going to be rejected. So what we see works well is doing income brackets. So, $20,000 to $30,000, $30,000 to $40,000, whatever it may be. Have a set of brackets with radio buttons. Let them pick it. If it doesn't matter that much to you, you just want to get an idea. You just need to be careful about how you set those brackets so they're consistent and don't look strange. And again, there's a bit about that in the white paper. But if you bracket together those, that tends to work much better, because people are much more, it's easier for them to calculate if they've got a 10,000 margin of error, and also they feel that then you're not prying into the deepest of financial circumstances, and you're not going to ask them more personal questions that they're not prepared to give you the answer to, if that makes sense.
Cool. We got another question coming in as well. So basically, we have time for one more, don't we? How important is it to allow users to come back the next day and pick up from where they left?
Yeah, so this is from Gareth, isn't it? Yes, very important. If you've got a complex form, if people are leaving you either because they can't find the information, or they're tired, or they don't want to commit just yet, it's absolutely crucial. We, I don't have specific figures on it, but I know when we've looked at forms in the past, if you can't do that, then what you'll see, if you do your returning user tracking in Google Analytics or in Zuko, you'll see them come back and bounce very quickly, because they'll go, I've spent 5 minutes, 10 minutes of my time previously, and people have dropped out, and it's not saved, so I can't be bothered to do it again. So certainly you will see a massive decreasing conversion if you don't allow it, particularly if you have a complex form, if that makes sense.
Cool. He says thank you, so I guess that means it made sense. That's all the questions we have so far. If anybody has any final questions, if you want to pop them in the chat now. If not, then that's all the questions.
Okay, great. I say if anyone has any questions they want to ask us offline, we've got our details on the presentation. You can come through to support@zuko.io. More than happy to give you our thoughts on anything form related. Doesn't look like there are any other questions. Just like an auction, we'll give you a couple more seconds if there's any more questions. Otherwise, we will great. We will wrap this up. I say it's short and sweet. There's more in the white paper. We're happy to have a conversation if anyone has any other questions about forms in the financial sector or elsewhere. But if that is that, I think we shall wrap this up now. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.